What's up guys, welcome back to another build series. Today we're going to be building a Pivot Trailcat LT. If you haven't seen our other build series, we did a Crux DSW for Thomas, one of our owners, and we have Chris here, the other owner, putting together his new LT. So he came off of a Pivot Firebird. He hasn't had a trail bike for a little while now, and he's been jonesing to get back out there. So Chris, why did we pick a Trailcat LT?
I loved my Firebird. It was probably my favorite bike that I've ever had, but it was a little bit too much bike for most of the trails around here. And I hate to admit it, but I'm getting a little older and I'm not sending it like I once was, or at least I'm not willing to risk it every ride like maybe I used to. And so I wanted a really good all-around trail bike that I could take to the park, I could do bigger days with, but also I could be fast on trails that weren't as consequential.
That makes sense. I mean, this bike I'm really excited on the specs on this bike. First off, it looks sweet. It's a 150, what is the rear travel? Is it 140?
135.
135, so it's a 150, 135, which is plenty to still get after it pretty good.
This is, to be honest, I haven't had a trail bike for probably 4 months, you'd say. And so there hasn't been anything that really excited me. I looked at a couple bikes, I rode a couple bikes, but then this thing came out and I was like, okay, this kind of ticks all the boxes.
Yeah, so this is pretty sweet. So we've got a couple brands kind of showed up and sent us some stuff. So this is gonna be a pretty rad build. As always, we're decking the whole thing out with Betterbolt's titanium. We're gonna throw some motives on here. Chris does a lot of our product testing. He does a lot of the development with brake levers and that sort of thing. And because of that, he rides, and we all here ride a lot of different brakes, which means that sometimes we throw something on there, ride it for a few weeks, take it back off. So we're gonna set up this build with motives, but that's probably not where it's going to stay. That's gonna be the theme for a lot of this build, is we're gonna build it with something, he's gonna go ride it, and we're gonna take stuff off, and we'll bring you along for the process of us testing and tuning and switching stuff out.
I wanna say thank you to Pivot for helping out with the frame. Really excited to get that going, and then our buddies at Fox also with the fork. I think the fork's gonna make this build, I think, and we'll build around it. One thing that I knew that I wanted to have was the Reynolds Pivot wheel set. Yeah. So it's I9 hubs, and then Reynolds carbon hoops, and Pivot specs these specifically for their, depending on the bike. And so these are 30 mil internal front and 28 mil rear. So it's kind of a really interesting combo to me. And it should fit this bike perfectly. So I had those wheels on my last Pivot and never once did I ever have an issue, so.
Yeah, sweet. Well, let's go ahead and get started on the build. We're gonna break this up into a few different episodes. So definitely hit the reminder to make sure that you come back to view more of these build videos. We're gonna start by getting this into a rolling chassis. So we're gonna get the tires mounted, wheels installed. We're gonna have to do a little bit of work on this fork. This right now is sitting at 160 and we have a 150 air spring for it. So we're gonna have to choke down that fork. We'll take you along for that. And then we'll wrap this video up and we'll catch you guys on the next one where we get kind of the whole drivetrain installed and get the bike a lot more rideable. Let's get started with getting the rolling chassis going. We're gonna choke this fork down to 150.
So I've always wanted to do this myself before, but I've always been scared. So I'm interested to see how easy it is.
So step one, before you do anything, I always take the core out. You just don't want this to have air in it when you start messing around with the air spring. It just creates problems for leaving it in and having it shoot out can be a problem. And then right there, I'm bleeding the air out so it doesn't suck up. That will make pulling the air spring out the bottom a lot easier. I won't be fighting all that pressure when I'm trying to pull the air spring out. Because of what we're going to do later, I'm going to take this cap out of the top. So Fox switched their top cap here from the standard either 36 mil, 24 mil bolt to this cassette tool here. Unfortunately, our cassette tool doesn't ratchet, so you're gonna have to sit here while I slowly get this a half turn at a time. Now that we have all the air taken out, we are going to take the lowers off. we need to take the rebound damper off. Now, luckily on this fork, I don't really care where it gets set because we're going to have to redo everything afterward. But take this little cap off. The key here is going to be making sure that you keep your workspace organized because you just don't want to lose any of these pieces. You're going to have quite a few. Yep. So we're just going to break both of these loose. We're not going to take them off yet. Break that guy loose there. And swap over to our 10. And if you have the right tool for knocking these loose, you can take them all the way off. But then again, you probably won't be listening to me talk about how to do it if you actually have the right tool. So you can do it like this as well. You just risk damaging this bolt a little, this nut a little bit. But basically we need to knock the air spring. It presses into the bottom of the lower here, and we just need to knock it up just a little bit. We're just gonna unthread it like a thread or two and give it a nice little tap and repeat the process. You don't wanna go too far because you don't wanna ruin these threads. But now I have it off, and you wanna save this plastic washer. This is a crush washer. It's what helps provide the seal. And now we're gonna switch over and do the same thing with this 14 here. This is for the damper, 15 again, sorry. And that's what I was checking for. Once I can push it up with my hand, I've pressed it out of the lower, and you'll see I had a trash can under here for a reason. There's a little bit of oil stored in the bottom of these forks. This is for lubrication. And now we're ready to pop this guy off. There we go. And this is when you would replace your actual seals in the bottom of the lower, but this is a brand new fork. So I'm just going to set this aside for now. Next, we're going to have a C-clip in here holding in the bottom of the air spring. We don't have any little screwdrivers. All right, you're just gonna pry this little C-clip out, just like that. And then I always push this up just a little and I give it a nice good pull. It's going to be a lot easier to take out if you did what I did in the previous step, where I, after letting the air out, pushed the fork down to allow for the negative air pressure to be released. That way you're not fighting the negative air when you're trying to pull this out. Alrighty, so you're going to want to put a ton of suspension grease all over these seals. Now you don't want to go too crazy with it because you can actually add too much, but you want to make sure that these are nice and lubricated with suspension grease, not normal grease. That's important. Now that we have our 150 air spring all lubed up, we're just gonna gently pop it back in. Make sure it goes all the way in. We're going to grab our retaining clip, and as much of a pain as these Fox ones are to get out, they're very easy to put back in. Just like that. That is in. Now you do want to be very careful here and really make sure that it did seat all the way. I've had it in the past where it looked like it did and it didn't. And you put the whole fork together, put all the oil back in, compress the bike, and boom, air spring shoots out. And that is not fun to fix. So I like to do this with the fork up and down. You don't have to, it's just easier. I always start at the back, get it in sideways, pull it forward, and there we go. Now put these up to the side because we're going to have to fill the lowers with oil. The oil that we're putting in the lower here is just lubrication for basically what's moving up and down. We're going to use Fox 20 weight gold. If you don't know how much to use or what to use, you can look up on Fox's website your serial number and they will have all the seals you need, oil, specs, torque specs, everything is on there. So right now I have the lowers pulled down just far enough that the damper and the air spring are not sticking out, and I'm just going to fill both of these with the correct amount of oil. Now we can push this down and you'll see the air spring and the damper come back out, and we're going to put our crush washer. Now you really are supposed to replace the crush washer. They're one-time use items. We do not have a replacement crush washer with us, but we're gonna be okay here because this fork is brand new. So get that guy threaded down. And then again, if you looked up your fork on Fox's website, they will give you the correct torque specs for these bolts as well. So we're gonna follow that as well. Bringing this guy up to torque. And what this is doing really when you're bringing this up to torque is you're pressing the damper and the air spring back into the lower, as well as crushing that plastic washer, which helps to provide that seal to keep the oil that we just put in actually inside the lower. And that is it for swapping out the air spring. Now we just need to put the air cap back on, but the reason that we took that off is this is an old trick that I used to do on all my forks. And when I took this air spring out, it actually looks like Fox has started to send their forks stock like this. We always used to, at the shop, put a little bit of float fluid. This is commonly what you would use to rebuild your actual shock. Now it looks like they had something similar to like 20 weight in here to begin with, but by pouring this on top of the piston, your air spring, what you allow is to have lubrication that can actually travel up and down with your fork. A lot of air springs usually just have grease wrapped around them or smeared around them, and what happens is when the fork travels up, it pushes the grease up. When it comes back down, the grease doesn't come back down. And what can happen is eventually over time that you'll kind of develop a little bit of stiction, which is when the fork is a little bit reluctant to move in that little bit of travel before you've broken it free. So by pouring a little bit of float fluid on top, you allow lubrication to travel up and down with the fork and stay keeping that piston lubricated the entire time. You don't want to do a whole lot, just enough to cover the piston. You don't want to like just dump a whole gallon of float fluid in there. Like I was saying, it looks like Fox used 20 weight. This one I will say I did not actually look up on their website to what they recommend. I've always used float fluid and it's worked in the past. Float fluid's quite a bit thicker than 20 weight. But at the end of the day, it's not really going to cause any issues if we used something slightly different here. Now we're ready to slide this back on. Chris, do you think you want to run any more volume spacers, or you want to try it out with one first?
No, I was good. That's kind of my go-to. Actually, let's add one.
Okay, so we're gonna go two volume spacers on a 150.
Every time I do this, and I end up putting in one more than is stock, so much better.
Alrighty, and that is going to cover rebuilding this fork and throwing a new air spring in. We're gonna put the valve stem back in, put our Better Bolts cap back on, and when we air this fork up, we're actually going to stop every 20 psi, and we're going to cycle the fork all the way up and down. And what that's going to do is it's going to properly mix the air between your positive and your negative chamber and make sure that those are equal. Because what can happen if you don't do that is you just get all of the air into your positive chamber, and you can have issues where you have basically no small bump compliance, and that's because you have no air in your lower under your air spring basically. So we want to make sure that we're cycling the suspension the entire time that we're inflating it. Now we're ready to begin.
Okay, so one of the themes of this bike is going to be we have a ton of stuff laying around the shop and we're going to use it. So we have this really cool looking Hope stem, throwing Better Bolts stem bolt kit in it as we're getting ready to put the fork in the bike. And then the other thing I'm really excited about is these new 1-Up bars. So I ran 1-Up bars on an old bike a couple years ago, but look at these things. This is their brand new one. And look at the pinch right there. These things are gonna be, at least they should be, really compliant. So I wanna test these for a little while and see how nice they feel.
Sweet, this is the Hope Gravity stem. They were actually kind enough to give this to us at Sea Otter like 2 years ago so that we could get product photos on our website. And they allowed us to hang on to it. So now it is making its way onto a bike.
I know some of you are gonna give me crap about putting the bars on before I put the fork with the stem, but you guys can suck it. I'm just excited.
I've made this mistake in the past and I've clamped the fork the wrong way, and you finish your cut and the fork falls off. So when you're clamping into a saw guide, definitely make sure that you clamp that the right way around. Also, in one of our videos in the past, everyone seemed upset that I was using a saw to cut the steer tube. I prefer the saw over the pipe cutter. I just don't like the way the pipe cutter kind of crushes the steer tube. It's not that one way's wrong and one way's right, but I've always used the guide and the saw, and it's the way that I'm always gonna do it. When you deburr these things, do it with the fork pointed down. That way the metal shavings don't find their way up to your seals. That's a common mistake, and it's not the end of the world, but it's a real big bummer to try and clean out.
Why are you breathing so hard?
So, I could be completely wrong here. I'm pretty sure that Fox's newer forks, the Podium, like the one that came gold, and the new like SL models, have a stronger or a thicker steer tube up here because they have gotten so much harder to cut.
I think they all do.
Yeah.
Because that's not an SL either.
Yeah, this is just the new. This is
New 36.
Yeah, this is the new 36, but I think all of them got new steer tubes.
This looks thicker to me.
And I could be completely 100% wrong, but the last like 3 forks I've installed, all from the new lineup, have been way harder to cut. So probably should be something that I ask our Fox guy, but either way, we're gonna get the star nut in here and get the stem on. All right, now that it's time to get this installed, I usually go pretty heavy on the grease here. I'd rather it all squirt out and have to wipe it off than have a creaky headset. Diagnosing creaks is such a pain. I have to deal with Chris telling me in a few days that his fork's creaking.
No, I do not tolerate creaks. That's one of the reasons why I like Pivot so much is I didn't have one creak in that Firebird for the 2 years. I had it for 2 years and 2,000 miles. I put on that bike and never one creak.
Couple bottom brackets though.
I blow through bottom brackets. Yeah.
Chris, I do not understand, goes through bottom brackets faster than anyone I've ever met. Like, I have bottom brackets last me like 2-3 years. Chris is like every 6 months going through a bottom bracket.
Yeah,
and it's
I don't get it.
The moment of truth. Did I leave enough fork? The orange on the green is so sick. I'm a big fan of the orange top caps. These are our Better Bolts Fox top caps for Grip 2.
I'm gonna be honest, those are probably gonna go.
Really?
I have a feeling it's gonna be a lot of color on this bike with the gold bolts, and I might black those out.
Well, that's the benefit. We have 12 color options, so there's quite a few to choose from.
Okay, so I'm super excited about these rims, like I said. Tire choice, I'm not sure yet. I'm going with Pivot's suggestion here, which is dissector in the rear and a DHR in the front. I've never ridden the dissector. I have ridden DHR front and rear, which I really do enjoy. I'm not a fan of the DHF, but I really don't know what I want to do yet with this bike. If I want to put more of a trail tire or a little burlier tire to be able to kind of romp on this bike a little bit. So we're gonna see. I think this bike's gonna go through 2 or 3 sets of tires really quick.
As far as my experience goes with the dissector, it is a phenomenal rear tire, but the tire life, how long it lasts, has not been great. I've been getting maybe 200 miles out of one of these before it is just completely torn to shreds. Sealant, we always gotta plug our boys, SSB. Those guys always support us and help us out with bike cleaners, lubes, sealant. This is some of the best tire sealant I've ever used, and I'm not just saying that because they help us out with everything. This stuff is phenomenal. It coats the whole tire. It almost creates like an inner skin inside of the tire.
The best. We probably have 4 different sealants floating around the shop, but I only put this in my bikes now. It's by far the best sealant that I've ever used.
So again, these are the Reynolds rims It's a 28 rear and a 30 internal front on a i9 Hydra hub. This, unfortunately, is the Hydra 1. We got these before the Hydra 2 was released, so not getting that upgraded internals with the, what is it now, 800 points of engagement or something like that?
I think it's 800,000.
800,000?
Yeah.
Probably close to that. One more little spot.
These should be the same hubs that I had on the Firebird.
Correct.
And they were flawless, so I'm good with this.
i9's had a bomb-proof, crazy hub for the last, 8 years, so it's not like getting the Hydra 1 is a bad hub. Just would have been cool to have the Hydra 2.
Okay, so the DHR in the front. Now, I've heard people say the DHR is a rear tire. I don't think that's what the R stands for, but maybe I'm wrong. And I have ridden DHR front and rear on a previous bike, and I absolutely loved it. So I don't know what the R actually stands for. Maybe it is rear.
Pivot has, or sorry, not Pivot, Maxxis has said it stands for something else. In the past, the DHR in the front has not been my favorite tire. Actually, all around the DHR has not been my favorite tire. I feel like, personally, it's a little slow rolling.
It is, yeah. I feel like this combo is not going to be the fastest combo, but I want to ride it for a little bit and then go down to maybe a forecaster or something similar and see if I get acceptable grip with a faster rolling tire. That's my plan.
We're good here. As far as rotors go, we're gonna do 200 front, 200 rear. We're just doing these SRAM center lines. They are not my favorite option, but they're not horrible. I would prefer, at least from SRAM, the HS2, which is a little bit thicker. However,
are we doing center lock?
This is what we had. Well, these are center lock rims. I'm sorry, center lock hubs. So we don't have any center lock.
Oh, they are. I thought they were.
They're center lock hubs, and Pivot was kind enough to send us adapters with the hubs, which is really nice. But we at the moment don't have any center lock rotors on hand, so we're going to have to use these adapters for now. But this is probably, like some other stuff, something that's going to get swapped out in the near future.
These are not going to be on here very long.
But it's enough to ride the bike and enjoy it for the first go around. So we're doing a 200 in the rear as well. Personally, this is not my favorite setup. Now this is where there's no right, there's no wrong. I like staggering my brake rotors. So I like to throw a bigger rotor in the front than I do the rear, or I will do something like Magura's like trail brake setup where you'll have a 4-piston front, 2-piston rear, and then I'll match rotor size. But I tend to like, and this is just how my riding style is complemented. I like when my rotors are mix matched, but Chris likes having his rotors the same.
On my XC bike, I do enjoy the mismatched setup. Actually, they're both 180, but I'm running the Magura MT Trails. Yeah.
Trail SL.
Trail SL. So it's a 2-piston, yeah, 2-piston in the rear, and they're great. Perfect for XC, but I like on my trail bikes to run the same rotor.
Just always careful with center lock rings to make sure that they're threading on straight, because it is such a fine thread pitch that you can pretty easily cross thread these things. So, oh, that's on camera.
We'll edit that out.
This thing doesn't, they like beveled it up. What? Oh, getting my excuses after I
Here they come.
had a wrench slip. Rad. Lastly, we're going to get the cassette on here just so we can get everything on the bike. We're doing a full GX setup on this bike, partly because of cost, but also it performs exceptionally well. We said the same thing when we did that Crux build, which again, if you haven't seen it, that was an awesome build. Everyone seems to really enjoy that one. It was a Crux DSW. We put GX transmission on that as well. The main difference is that you're going to see between running something like XO or XX is just that the GX is heavier, but it comes in way below.
This is how I feel about it, and this is why I chose this, is because if you want to, most bike companies, when you move up to an XO build, you're going to be paying significantly more for that build, and you're getting, yeah, you might get carbon bars, or they might throw something else in there, but you're probably paying another $2 grand for that XO build versus the GX build. And to me, the minor weight savings that it is not worth it. So I may change out the cranks, I may change out the cassette, but I actually like the derailleur, the GX derailleur better, how it hides the battery.
Absolutely.
I prefer the way it looks.
The GX stuff is just bomb-proof. Like I always say, not even just the axis, but for the cable as well. Like it just works. The GX derailleur, what Chris was talking about, if you aren't familiar, hides the battery up and under, right in here. Whereas the XX and XO, because they were released on launch day, when SRAM fully released their transmission setup, they actually have the battery mounted back here vertically. So what happens a lot with SRAM's releases is they always hang on to GX for a little while. The XO and XX stuff gets out in hands, it gets product tested, they see what breaks. And GX usually comes out a little bit later at a lower price point, but sometimes improvements.
Yeah, and they fix all the little bugs. So I prefer that the battery's down in there. So that derailleur's staying.
The other nice reason about buying these pivot wheels is one of the only things that I'm not the biggest fan about on these pivots is their Superboost.
And why are you not a fan of that?
It just makes finding wheels hard. Not to say that it doesn't ride better or that there aren't trade-offs to running one or the other, but it makes riding something other than a pivot and bringing your parts along with you difficult. Here at the shop, we move through bikes pretty fast. And if you have a pivot and you want to go get like a specialized stump jumper or something, now you can't bring your wheels. So now you can't just sell a frame, buy a new frame, build up another bike. Or if someone's gonna send you wheels, you gotta ask if they have them in Superboost. It just makes it a little bit more difficult when the whole rest of the industry isn't using Superboost. It's not to say that it's bad, but it is slightly inconvenient when you're doing custom builds. You kind of just forget sometimes, and you get into a build and your wheels don't fit. So yeah, it's the only thing that I'm a little so-so on the pivots, but everything else is.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it that way. I've always just kind of like built it and forgot about it.
Alrighty, so that's gonna cover this video here. So we got this thing to a rolling chassis. We rebuilt the fork, we choked it down to 150. We got the cassette and wheels on, tires mounted, and we are really getting our first look at what this thing looks like, and what it's gonna look like when it's fully built. So we'll catch you guys in the next video. We're going to go over getting the drivetrain set up, we're gonna get the brakes installed, and we're gonna go over a little bit of a final kind of setup on this bike, and then we'll be ready to hit the trails. So stay tuned for that, guys. We'll see you later.